As long as the Miami Hurricanes can keep their penalties down and take care of the football, this game against Louisville will not be close.
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Friday and happy game day. We made it! I am Alex Donno, University of Miami alumnus, co-host of Locked On ACC, and host of Postgame on the Hurricanes Radio Network. And thank you so much to the everydayers for making Locked On Canes your first listen. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download FanDuel today. On this loaded episode, we will have our Week 8 ACC football rooting guide. Who should Miami Hurricanes fans be cheering for and against for the other football games happening this weekend? We'll talk about our biggest takeaways for Miami so far as they head into a conference showdown tonight, Friday night, 7 p.m. at Hard Rock Stadium. Let's get that electric juice going in the Asylum tonight. We'll break down Miami's keys against the Louisville Cardinals. And man, I especially want to win this game tonight beyond the obvious reasons, right? Want Miami to keep winning, stay a national title contender, ACC championship contender, all that. But Miami's got this great home winning streak going. The last team to beat Miami at Hard Rock Stadium was Louisville back near the end of the 2023 season, the end of the Tyler Van Dyke era. So that was Miami's last home loss. They're going to try to repeat history, the Cardinals. Miami's going to try for payback. Now, of course, Miami did beat Louisville last year on the road in a shootout slugfest, 52-45. I hope that tonight's game is a little lower scoring, at least on the Louisville side of things. Hold them under 45 tonight. If Miami scores 52, I'm perfectly fine with that. But coming away with a comfortable victory will be key. Speaking of keys, here are my 3 keys to the game this evening. Number 1. Limit the penalties and the turnovers. I mentioned it at the top. If Miami plays a clean game tonight, this game will not be close. Miami has advantages at the line of scrimmage, as they do in probably every game they play all year long. Louisville has some talent, but Miami has more talent. Miami is the home team. Miami is a 13.5-point favorite in this game. And if you keep the turnovers to a minimum, and if you keep your penalties in single digits, please, I don't believe this game is going to be close, and I believe Miami will cover the spread. The Hurricanes nationally have been very good when it comes to turnover margin to this point. Miami is 5th in the country in turnover margin at a +6. Louisville has had turnover issues. They are still +1 on the season, tied for 55th, which is bang average, and Louisville has not played an opponent like Miami to this point. The toughest game they've played was Virginia, who beat them in overtime a couple of weeks ago. Outside of that, they've played a bunch of cupcakes. So winning the turnover margin will be key. Both teams, Louisville and Miami, have had some issues with penalties, being a little bit undisciplined. So the Hurricanes will try to clean that up. You would expect, being the home team, you're probably going to have fewer of the procedural penalties because you don't, it was crazy crowd at Florida State a couple of weeks ago. Hopefully it'll be pretty quiet when your offense is operating, very loud when your defense is on the field there at the Asylum, but keep those penalties to a minimum. Key number 2, establish your running game to neutralize the Louisville pass rush. Now, of course, Miami's offensive line, to me, matches up well against anybody, but Louisville does have one of the tougher D-lines that Miami's going to face. And their top pass rusher, Clev Lubin, is having a really successful season so far with 4 sacks. Now, again, I do think Miami's offensive line matches up well against Louisville's defensive line, but that is a group that if you give, Carson Beck too many 3rd and longs, they can be dangerous. And when it comes to establishing a running game, it's not just me who wants this. Mario Cristobal, offensive line coach Alex Mirabal, running backs coach Matt Merritt would love to pound the rock tonight. Shannon Dawson, the offensive coordinator, would as well. And I think Miami can have success doing that, especially since, Louisville's defense, very good. They've been a little bit softer against the run, relatively speaking, than they have been against the pass. They're the 8th-ranked passing defense in the country. between Mark Fletcher, Marty Brown, and now, as Mario Cristobal described, a fully healthy Jordan Lyle. Fully healthy again for the first time since the first game this season. So add him to the rotation. I think Miami can have success running the football and setting the tone. Now, we always want to see big passes hit downfield as well, and Miami has the weapons, and C.J. Daniels, Malachi Toney are having great seasons. Carson Beck at quarterback is a Heisman candidate, but Miami's bread and butter tonight probably will be and should be pounding the rock and neutralizing that Louisville pass rush. My third key for tonight, which is so obvious, I could have led off with this one, but I saved the best for last. Create constant pressure for Louisville quarterback Miller Moss, who has already been sacked this year 13 times in 5 games, and he tends to make poor decisions under duress. That's when he tends to kind of chuck the ball out there, interceptions, pick sixes. He's thrown 3 pick sixes out of his 4 interceptions so far this season. And Miller Moss is not like some of the quarterbacks you've already faced this year. Thomas Castellanos is really mobile, quick, and athletic. Byron Brown is a mobile quarterback, the guy from USF that we faced. Miller Moss, relative to those other guys, is a bit of a statue. So, he's not going to be able to elude your rush the same way. Expect a big game from RUEBEN BAIN and a big game from Akeem Mesidor, who are 2 of the top 10 pass rushers in the country, RUEBEN BAIN being number 1. So put that constant pressure on Moss. He will make mistakes if you force him to. We're going to be taking questions on this episode from our Locked On Canes Insiders chat. If you want to become a Locked On Canes Insider, try it free for 14 days. Click the link in the show description below. You get text messages directly from my phone to yours with breaking news, recruiting scoops, show updates, one-on-one questions and answers. Try it free for 14 days. Then if you like it, you can opt in for $4.99 a month. Give you a lot of added value there on the Locked On Canes Insiders chat. We get one from DatDude239 who says, hey, what are your top 5 takeaways from the season so far? And which of Miami's coaches is your MVP outside of Shannon Dawson or Corey Heatherman, he says. All right, so my 5 takeaways. Number 1, this team, unlike, the last year, certainly the last several years, has finally achieved balance. This team has a great defense and an offense that is borderline great, and I believe can be great. So, being able to play complementary football, being able to trust your defense to make stops when you need them to, unlike last year. Credit to Corey Heatherman and Miami's personnel for dramatically turning this thing around. I mean, we mentioned before the season started that when Heatherman went to Minnesota last year, he waved a magic wand and took their defense from number 70 to top 10 in one season. Miami's defense last year probably wasn't quite as bad as Minnesota's was the year before Heatherman took over, but they were pretty bad last year. So he's waving that magic wand again. So that's my first takeaway. Number 2, I think we're seeing evidence, folks, that building a team from the trenches out is the best way to do it. Mario Cristobal and his staff have done a masterful job constructing this team. And any of us out there who are both Miami Dolphins fans and Miami Hurricanes fans, we see the difference, right? The Dolphins tried to build a track team with not very good lines of scrimmage. We see where that's gotten them. The Hurricanes, not to say we don't have good skill players, because obviously we do, but the focus for Mario Cristobal's construction was building the offensive line, building the defensive line, and then building outwards from that spine. And it's paying off very well, because if you can win at the line of scrimmage, you can beat anybody. Number 3, we've learned this year, this is a takeaway, Carson Beck was worth the commitment that Miami made to him. Both, the football commitment and whatever the financial commitment was. You remember a lot of blowhards during the offseason were saying, oh, Miami reached for Carson Beck, or why are they overpaying this guy? He's not that good. He's been worth every penny so far, and he has been worth the roster investment, everything that came with adding Carson Beck, his poise, his accuracy. He leads the ACC in completion percentage, the success he's had on the field. It's been worth it for Carson Beck. Takeaway number 4, Miami's players, I appreciate them so much. They are respectful and they are focused. They have the right mindset for keeping the outside noise muted, whether that be outside criticism during the offseason or now outside praise that they're the number 2 team in the country and everybody's talking them up. I believe they take on the personality of their head coach, which is hard work, focus, and don't listen to what outsiders have to say about you. And then finally, here's something that I love. This team is showing you that the best players are going to play no matter how young they are or where you think they should have been on the depth chart before the season. I mean, Miami's depth chart is a true meritocracy. Malachi Toney, this is a player who should still be in high school, but he earned a starting job over more experienced guys. Every spot is earned. And in terms of coaching MVPs, you said I couldn't use Shannon Dawson, who's Miami's OC and quarterbacks coach, and I can't use Corey Heatherman, who's the DC and the linebackers coach. So I'm going to say it's probably outside of those two. It's a tie between Jason Taylor, coaches Miami's defensive ends. He's got the most fearsome duo in the country and good players on the bench as well. I want to shout out the backup edge rushers. But I can't forget about Alex Mirabal. I know, Alex Mirabal is such a constant here because, he and Mario Cristobal are best friends and everything that I think sometimes fans take him for granted. But, I mean, we are so lucky to have Coach Mirabal, and he has got that offensive line absolutely clicking and humming throughout the year so far. Ooh, so we got questions about who's going to play in the ACC championship game. Later on, we're going to talk about our rooting guide, who Miami fans should cheer for and cheer against in this college football weekend. You want to keep it locked right here. We're only getting started on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. It's almost the weekend, and it's time to look back and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more every time you order, these players delivered when it mattered most. Let's break it down. For your Miami Hurricanes, Malachi Toney has been delivering in a big way. Last time we saw our Canes against Florida State, Toney took over 100 receiving yards, 2 touchdowns, had a third touchdown that was taken off the board for a questionable penalty. When the pressure is on, young Malachi Toney has come through, no hesitation, no delay. And if you've been watching week after week, that performance wasn't a fluke. Toney is on a streak. And just like baby Jesus delivered for the Miami Hurricanes, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays. With DoorDash Streaks, you save every Saturday you order. Stack it up all season, you could save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday. Keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo period ends on November 18th. We're also brought to you by SupplyHouse. When the opening whistle blows on a new repair, get your crew moving forward with SupplyHouse. Order today and see parts on your doorstep tomorrow. Over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business. Their real-time inventory and honest lead times keep you from punting projects, while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. Need parts for a project? SupplyHouse has next-day delivery. Talk about a game changer. Their Trademaster perks, like priority shipping and dedicated support, make the whole process smoother. So join the free Trademaster program today and score serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, and a dedicated support line. Visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free and use promo code SHCollege5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service. Thank you for making Locked On Canes your first listen. For your next listen, check out Locked On ACC. Kenton Gibbs from Locked On Wolfpack and I will have an episode later on today. We'll talk about the Miami game. You also have Cal versus North Carolina late night tonight and a full slate of Saturday games. We will break it all down on Locked On ACC, which is free wherever you get your podcasts and available free on YouTube. All right, we get a question from Locked On Canes insider Ed, who says, hey, going into week 8, who do you think is going to play in the ACC championship game? Listen, obviously, Miami looks poised. Hopefully we get it done tonight against Louisville. Miami looks poised to get one of those ACC championship game spots, right? Teams you thought would get in preseason, Clemson, way behind the 8 ball with 2 conference losses already. Clemson's been playing better, but they've also been playing against crap teams lately. Their 2 wins come against North Carolina and Boston College, who are both terrible. So Clemson is basically eliminated from the ACC championship game. Florida State's 0-3 in the ACC. They're eliminated. The teams that you look out for most right now, other teams who don't have a conference loss, Virginia technically does not have an ACC loss because their loss to North Carolina State was a non-conference game. Weird, but that's just reality. I think Miami is going to end up facing whoever wins tomorrow. I think it's a noon game tomorrow between Georgia Tech and Duke. GT is on the road in Durham. I think whoever wins that game, those teams are both undefeated in conference. I think the winner of that game is the team I would give the edge to face Miami in the ACC championship game. I don't believe in Virginia as much. I think they've been a great story for the past couple of weeks, but I think they're probably going to suffer a loss or two down the stretch. SMU is also in the mix, but, I believe Miami will beat SMU in a couple of weeks, knock them down a peg. So Miami does not face either of Georgia Tech versus Duke in the regular season. So I'm going to say the winner of that GT Duke game is probably going to be the team I will favor to face Miami and Charlotte at the end of the regular season. We get a really good question from Bob in Louisville. And I know Bob, he's living in enemy territory tonight. He says, what has specifically been done to address the ridiculous amount of penalties? And Bob adds, this game is against the team where I live. I hope we crush them. In terms of, Mario has addressed the penalty issue. He's aware of it. He's annoyed by it. He hasn't given us like a specific formula of what they're doing in practice to try and fix it. Cristobal does, obviously. He emphasizes that the high number of penalties, he says, is not acceptable and does not align with Miami's principles or teaching. So, you're probably, I don't know if you're going to be doing extra gassers or push-ups in practice. They do have referees in practice, so they are calling penalties. Obviously there's been some emotional stuff when it comes to late hits out of bounds against Florida State. We had a targeting in that game, some personal fouls. I mean, that stuff you need to emphasize the discipline and the lack of acceptance that comes with that. Again, I would hope that the procedural penalties are down this week compared to the Florida State game since we're back at home. And, for as much as I want the Hard Rock Asylum to be crazy tonight, just be crazy when our team is on defense, not when they're on offense. Give them as much quiet to execute their offense as possible. But it's something Mario obviously is not a fan of. He wants the team to improve on fundamental aspects of the game. Talked about getting your feet in the ground, getting your hands inside, playing with a flat back, rolling out your hips, knocking people back, he says. So, I don't know what specifically they're doing in practice to combat it, but I'm sure it's been a high focus part of practice. So it's a great question, Bob in Louisville. Let's see. Will 304 says, hey, do you have any thoughts on a lesser known player who might really make a difference in tonight's game against Louisville? All right, so I'm going to go non-obvious. I'll give you a couple here. As I see the tight ends starting to get more involved in the passing game, would not shock me tonight if you get an Alex Bowman touchdown. I know obviously Elijah Lofton is the tight end we all talk about, but Bauman gets a lot of playing time. And this is a guy who caught 7 touchdown passes at Tulane last year, was really a weapon in the red zone for them. We're starting to see him come on. He had some catches in the Florida State game. I wouldn't be surprised if we see somebody like that catch a touchdown. That's kind of a lesser known, lesser appreciated guy on Miami's roster. And defensively, everyone's going to be talking about BAIN and Mesidor tonight. But how about the interior? Louisville, part of their offensive line issue, a serious problem at left guard. That's been a really problematic area for them. And so I think Ahmad Moten Sr., who's often lined up over the left guard, could have a big game and a big impact on this game. So I'll go Ahmad Moten on defense as a lesser talked about guy. And I'll go Alex Bauman on offense. I'm trying to give you some names that are a little bit deeper tracks on this roster. And I'd love to see both of them, among other. You know what? I'd like to see JoJo Trader get some playing time tonight and score a touchdown. How great would that be? As we have some suspicions he could get some PT here tonight. So I appreciate the question. We get this one from the 386 area code who says, hey, I would like to ask you who you realistically feel Miami is in a good position for a flip recruiting-wise. Who are we trending for? Let's see. So, Miami just lost a flip a couple days ago. North Carolina, of all teams. Now, apparently, they may have Saudi Arabian money. Michael Lombardi, their GM, it's been reported now. Pablo Torre reported that Lombardi, like 2 weeks before the season started, took a trip out to Saudi Arabia to try and seek fundraising opportunities and NIL funds. I don't know if that had anything to do with flipping Kenton Dobson III. But if Miami just lost a flip, which flips can we possibly gain? The names that I hear the most buzz for, safety Blake Stewart, who's currently committed to Clemson. That's someone to keep an eye out on. Miami has, they've gone out to see his high school games during their bye weeks. That's someone we're keeping near and dear to our hearts. Anthony Tank Jones is probably at the top of my wish list for flips. Just an elite edge rusher, 5-star guy. He's committed to Oregon, but Tank has made, I think, at least 3 game day visits down to Miami already. So Miami's been pushing for him. Texas A&M defensive line commit Bryce Perry Wright. Again, I don't know how he may be pretty solid to his current commitment, but that seems to be our top defensive line priority. Also, Nolan Wilson is another one Miami is really after. I'll mention Calvin Russell, 4-star receiver. We all know him. Miami Northwestern committed to Syracuse. I believe Russell remains a possibility, despite him putting out some social media stuff lately about how much he loves Syracuse. I don't believe it's over for him. And also, there is some suspicion that, Fran Brown, who's the coach of Syracuse, might end up getting some consideration for one of these big-time open jobs. So if he gets poached away somewhere, then all bets are off for that Syracuse recruiting class, so keep your eyes on that. We get this question from, I don't know who this is from. They didn't sign it, or I forgot to write down their name. But he says, best case scenario for UM is 5 players drafted in round 1. Which 5? Okay, so I'm going to be honest with you. I can't see 5 going in the first round. I think Miami's going to have more than 5 players drafted. I can't see 5 in the first round. I think best case scenario is 4 in the first round, because I think that after the top 4, it's hard to imagine any of the other guys climbing into round 1. So here's the 4 that I could see. Ruben Bain is basically a first-round lock at this point, so you can pencil him in. CC Mauigoa, right tackle, basically a lock for the first round. So you're going to have at least 2. 2 is the floor. There's obviously a scenario where Carson Beck is a first-round draft pick. That's not set in stone yet, but if he keeps playing the way he's playing, NFL scouts say he could be playing himself back into round 1. And I could see Akeem Mesidor possibly climbing into round 1. He's having that good of a year. So those are the 4 possibilities. 2 of them locks. 2 of them could get into the first round. Other players I could see drafted, I just don't see them getting anywhere near first-round grades right now. Hopefully that can change. But I could see Inez Cooper getting drafted. James Brockermeyer, the center, is getting some draft buzz. Markel Bell, left tackle, should be getting draft buzz. CJ Daniels. I guess maybe if CJ Daniels has a really dynamic finish, and he's been dynamic to this point, maybe he could play himself into the first round. I just don't see him getting those draft grades right now. But CJ, I'm a huge fan of CJ. Jacoby Thomas at safety, Wesley Besaint, Keontae Scott at nickel, who's been one of the best players on this team, are going to be draft possibilities, and maybe even Mark Fletcher. Now, I would prefer Mark Fletcher stay for another year, but we know how sometimes running backs will want to make the jump as soon as they can. I think Fletcher could get drafted, but man, I'd prefer, he's a junior. I'd prefer Fletch stay around another season if I can make that opinion felt. All right, let's, on the other side, let's take a look at the ACC football schedule for this weekend, including another Friday night game tonight after our game. Who should Miami fans root for to win? Who should we root against? You want to keep it locked right here. We're not done yet on Locked On Canes. What do you get when you have a bald eagle standing on top of a silverback gorilla, riding a T-Rex? Confidence. Pure confidence. If you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, It's time to meet Rugiet Go Long. Guys, you've probably heard of Viagra or Cialis. Maybe you've even tried them. But if you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, it's time to meet Rugiet Go Long. This is not just another ED pill. It's a total game changer for confidence. Go Long combines 2 doctor-trusted medications in one dual-action formula so you can get hard and go the distance. The process is simple. Connect with a board-certified doctor 100% online, and if prescribed, your treatment ships discreetly right to your door. Ready to level up your confidence in the bedroom? Head to RUGIET.com and use promo code LOCKEDONCollege for 15% off your first order. That's RUGIET.com, promo code LOCKEDONCollege. Make sure to use our code so they know we sent you. We're also proudly brought to you by FanDuel. Guys, the NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer you do not want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love how FanDuel gives me so many ways to play. I built parlays, tried player props, even followed the live lines during games. It makes watching football even more exciting when you've got a little something riding on the action. Whether you're a casual fan or you love diving into the stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. Happy game day, and thank you so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen. 7 o'clock tonight, Miami Hurricanes hosting the Louisville Cardinals. Miami ranked number 2, Louisville unranked. If they had beaten Virginia a couple weeks ago, Louisville would be ranked. So we were robbed of that ranked matchup because of Louisville's overtime loss to the Cavaliers. But here we are. Miami has another opportunity and an opportunity to start their ACC schedule 2-0. And remember, right after the game tonight, you're going to hear on this channel, Locked On Canes, from our postcast king, Jim Greasehopper. I'm going to be connecting with Grease later on today, shortly before the game, to talk a little bit more about the Miami matchup and preview what he thinks he's going to be talking about on the postcast tonight. And we're not the only ACC game tonight. We got a full weekend slate coming up. So if I look at the ACC schedule, who Miami fans should be rooting for or rooting against. So late tonight, you've got North Carolina, Bill Belichick's boys, on the road to take on the Cal Golden Bears. Neither of these teams are on Miami's schedule this year, so irrelevant for strength of schedule, but aren't we all Cal fans tonight? Don't we all want the chaos and the circus and the absolute mess that is Tar Heels football to continue to implode? And also, listen, we just lost a recruit to a North Carolina flip this week, so maybe he can see, maybe he hasn't watched any college football this year, and he doesn't realize how bad it's been in Chapel Hill. He's going to realize that tonight. The Golden Bears are favored by 8.5 points. I hope Cal wins by 50. So let's go Cal tonight. All right, so noon game tomorrow. And again, neither of these teams are on Miami's regular season schedule, but when the 12th-ranked Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets take on Duke in Durham, North Carolina, it's got big implications on the ACC championship game. And I mentioned, I think the winner of that game is going to be in pole position to face Miami and Charlotte in a couple of months, about a month and a half from now. I think Miami fans actually root for Duke. Now, if you don't want to root for Duke because you don't really like Manny Diaz, I guess I understand it. But logically, the reason why you root for Duke tonight is Duke is in a Georgia Tech is in a situation where they don't play Miami or Virginia, and none of Miami, Virginia, and Georgia Tech play each other this year. So you could have a 3-game tie scenario where and not expecting this to happen necessarily, but if Miami, UVA, and Georgia Tech all go unbeaten in conference play, Miami could miss out on the ACC championship game because of a tiebreaker we have no control over, which is conference winning percentage, a winning percentage of conference opponents. So, I mean, listen, Miami might edge out that tiebreaker, but we have no control over it. Could you imagine a 12-0, potentially number 1 ranked Miami team missing out on the ACC championship game because of some ridiculous tiebreaker? If Duke wins tonight, that tiebreaker becomes irrelevant. So you root for, tomorrow afternoon. You root for Duke tomorrow at noon. Non-conference game, Boston College versus UConn. I think you root for BC just because, a non-conference loss is always embarrassing if it's against, a group of 6 team. SMU at Clemson. I think you root for Clemson. Miami plays SMU, so there's a head-to-head. But I think since Clemson is already practically eliminated from the ACC championship game, I think you root for the teams who are unbeaten in conference to lose if possible, just to create a little bit more of a margin for error, right? That maybe, if God forbid Miami does slip up and lose an ACC game, if other teams have losses, you have a better chance to get to Charlotte. So since SMU is 2-0 in conference, I think you root for Clemson at 3:30 tomorrow. Virginia plays a non-conference game against Washington State. Virginia's favored by 17.5 points. I guess you root for the ACC team to protect the brand of the conference. You root for UVA. Pittsburgh at Syracuse. I could go either way on this one. Pittsburgh, they do have one conference loss, but they're 2-1. Maybe you root for Syracuse to create a little more parity if they beat Pitt. But then also, we're trying to steal Calvin Russell from Syracuse's recruiting class. So maybe you root for Syracuse to lose again. I could go either way on that one. I think logically it's probably better for Miami if Syracuse wins because they're no longer a threat to win the ACC at 1-2 in conference. So maybe if they hand Pittsburgh their second conference loss, it gives Miami more room for error. And 10:30 tomorrow night, Florida State on the road at Stanford. Both of those teams are on Miami's schedule, so the strength of schedule is irrelevant. Neither of those teams are a threat to win the conference. Florida State's 0-3 in the ACC. Stanford is 1-2, and they're not very good. Rivalry reasons. I think you root for Stanford in this one. You root for Stanford to hand Florida State their 4th straight loss and to force Florida State, who's already spent multiple millions on lawsuits against the ACC and on stadium renovations. They're going to want to buy Mike Norvell out for that $58.7 million if they lose. If they lose at Stanford tomorrow night, Norvell's not getting on that plane back home. So I think maybe you root for Stanford to root for the chaos. Throw a little petty into the mix. Thank you so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen. Make sure to smash that like button, subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your pods. Subscribe on YouTube, and we'll talk to you again next time on another episode of Locked On Canes. We are part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.